Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives. Today we have the enormous privilege of hosting Aotearoa, New Zealand's renowned neuroscience educator who has been captivating audiences over 250 times a year to sell out events in New Zealand, Australia and China. Father of three, foster father to many, and grandfather too, his professional background includes early childhood teacher, child therapist, social service manager, university lecturer and neuroscience trainer. With a legendary reputation as a lively, humorous and engaging speaker, he tells it as it is, through being honest and raw, inspiring thousands and empowering them on their journey through parenting and educating. Condensing 25 years of neuroscience research, you'll be captivated as we welcome onto our podcast, Nathan Wallis.
Thank you for coming on today, Nathan.
Yeah, pleasure.
We are very, very happy. We're so pleased to have you here. And we'll just dive straight on in. I have seen you talk twice now, and both times been highly entertaining. I've heard you talk about the first 1,000 days and I've heard you talk about the teenage brain.
Okay.
Both talks have helped me immensely deal with my life in general, which is really great. And not just teenagers, but my wealth of the brain. So thank you for that. Sue and I are advocates for teenagers. We love them.
Right, cool. Good to hear.
We absolutely love teenagers.
Yeah, I think they get a raw deal.
They do get a raw deal. And they're having a raw deal in life at the best of times anyway, because it's probably the hardest times of their life.
Yeah.
And currently, you know, we are really aware of the suicide rates here in New Zealand and things. There's a huge concern to us. And the teenagers we come across are in huge angst, and there's lots of stress, lots of anxiety.
Yeah.
Lots of nastiness happening within their friendship groups.
Yeah.
How can we help our teens navigate that stressful period in their life?
As parents, like, you know, when I look to the research, I mean, the sort of research answers and then just holistic answers.
What's
that? The research answers tell us that kids are outside the target group of developing anxiety and depression from social media if they have 2 hours a day device-free time. So you can let your kids participate in social media because it's really hard not to in the world they live in. It's like, you know, asking my parents not to do rock and roll. They were going to do it. So there's no point fighting it. But at least you know your kids can do that social media and you can really drastically reduce their risk by having 2 hours a day device-free time. And no, when the kids ask for that to be 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., no, you have to be awake for the device-free time. So, you know, actually I'd recommend around tea time.
Okay.
I know that's when they're flicking each other with tea towels and arguing over who's washing and who's drying, but that releases all the peptides in the brain that are associated with resilience and less likely to, whereas locking themselves in a room and staring at a pad for that 2 hours a day, that's what's really contributing to that. So you don't have to ban it altogether. You'll just have 2 hours. So it's good when research gives us nice clear guidelines like that to be able to sift through all of the research and find out what is it trying to tell us.
Yeah,
and so that's one of the clear messages it tells us. Holistically, my real answer would be, just, you know, from me, the way you make someone resilient is that people have to love themselves. And so the way people can love themselves is you model loving yourself. You know, often as a parent, we put everything aside to look after the kids.
Yeah.
And I don't want to validate those people that spend all of their money already on themselves and their makeup and no money on the kids and are always ditching them on other people. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about that parent that is always self-sacrificing to do things for the kids. But then what you're modelling to the kids is a real lack of self-care and self-love. So you need to show the kids that, you put them first and you make lots of sacrifices for them, but you also value yourself because kids will do as you do, not as you say.
And that's really important.
So if you don't value yourself, then you're going to produce probably a whole bunch of kids that don't value themselves, especially your same gender kids.
And this is what we're looking for as parents, isn't it? And you and I both educate children and teenagers as well, Joe, but I know that one thing that's really important for parents is being given tools that they can work with. What can I identify with? How can I implement strategy into my family situation with what's not working? How can I create a situation that does work for my children? And I think we're hungry for these tools. So obviously, coming from a neuroscience background, you can give that information to us. Do you think it's harder to parent now than it has been before? I work with parents and they say to me sometimes with skills I give them, so you've given me permission to parent, whereas I felt afraid to parent. Is that something that's always been the case, or do you think it's harder nowadays to parent?
I definitely think it's harder for parents. I think it's harder for children. I think everything's harder. We're a much less family-orientated society. Your grandparents and aunties and uncles and parents are all at work. And so we parent what for the last 100,000 years that used to take up most of our day, we now try and do it an hour a day or something. Most children are in an early childhood centre before the age of 1. So this generation of teenagers that we have now are the first generation that we experimented on seeing what it's like to be raised in an institution rather than at home. I think a lot of the anxiety and depression, and that's not a very popular thing for me to say, but with my knowledge of how the brain works, I think human beings are born predisposed to stress. So your brain stems aroused because that's a survival mechanism. You need to stay alive, and that means to be a bit stressed. We calm that survival brain and therefore bring online their higher intelligence, their ability to manage anxiety and depression. That's all brain number 4. I think staying at home, laxed out in the first 5 years, being pretty chill, and having a parent that was mainly, his main job was just to look after you, and you also had grandparents around and lots of aunties and stuff, that laxed out, chilled out, wasting your time childhood, and not immunised us, but gave us the ability to chill out. I think we've taken that away from teenagers. So now they're all raised in institutions, which are not necessarily doing any damage in the institution. Well, they are. A lot of them are shit, to be honest. But even, the good ones are not doing damage, but it's still not that environment. How many early childhood centres can achieve that laxed out, chilled out environment that was at your parents or your grandparents? Even when mum's nutting out twice a day, because our parents' generation, they didn't try and be that nice to their kids.
Because as human beings, we're born for connection, aren't we?
Yeah.
And innately, we were born for that initial connection with our mother, breastfeeding the baby, stay-at-home mum, as you say.
Yeah. Well, I would just say it doesn't have to be mother.
Yeah.
You just need that one person that is mental about you. It doesn't matter their gender or whether they're biologically related. Your brain just needs that one person that is besotted with you.
So would that be the case where a child is put into daycare? Would it be a more ideal situation where it's one-on-one contact as opposed to the child in childcare having, say, 5 carers? Is it
absolutely.
Creating a bond with one person?
Primary care rather than rostered care. So rather than you're rostered on nappies and then she's rostered on bottles and then he's rostered on sleep room and then she's rostered on, and you're getting all these different relationships, one person mainly looks after you. Yeah. It's still within an environment, so you're still going to have breaks. Just means someone's appointed as the child's secondary carer, so when you're not available, that person does it. So it ends out 80% of the time you do the kids' care. So they're getting, and then 20% of the time, or 15% of the time the buddy does it, and then 5% of the time other staff do it. And that's just like in a normal family. Mum does 80%, mum's sister does, who's helping her does 15%, and the other family do 5% of the...
Makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because I think, nowadays there's more single parents, there's less grandparents living at home, we're less living in extended families, aren't we? So for our listeners who are saying, that's all very well, but I have to go out to work because I'm a single parent, or I have to go to work because we've got to pay the mortgage. The costs of living are greater now than ever before. So invariably families have to have 2 parents that are working.
Yeah, that's right.
It's much harder.
And I'm not putting blame on them, that's what I'm saying. It is harder. We've created a society where it's really hard. You have to go to work. You've got to put the child into care. Gin and tonics here.
Gin and tonics.
Gin and tonic time. We can keep chatting. We can keep chatting while he gets the drinks. I'm not trying to diss those parents. That I'm just trying to say what the research says is really what's best, and then we haven't created a society around what the research says is best. If we even have the luxury of living in the same community as the kids' grandparents, the grandparents are probably at work. It is. We've made it way harder for parents, and so they do feel like 2 parents have to work. And I agree with that 90% of the time. Some of that's choice too, though. You can choose to live in the scummy, cheap suburb and have 1 parent stay at home, then you live in the flash suburb and have nice new carpet and stuff. And most people are choosing the flash suburb with a nice new carpet to get ahead. So some of it's choice, but I appreciate that a lot of it's not choice. For a lot of families, they have to have. You can have 2 parents working full time and still be under the bloody poverty line.
And is there a critical age that you'd say it would be ideal to have a parent at home with a child until a certain age?
Yeah, you're compromising all the way, because I think it would be ideal to have an at-home parent for your whole life, the way we've done it for most of society, and that's just too luxurious to dream about now. So when we have to look at the research to go, I think the answer you're probably looking, that's closest to what you really mean is 1,000 days. 1,000 days old, which is about 2.5. So the brain is, biologically designed to interact with the environment in the first 1,000 days. It's from conception to 1,000 days after conception. So that would seem to be the ideal time to really get most of the benefits.
Yeah.
But then you could say, like Scandinavian countries fund mum, Norway, they're funded for 2 years, and then the kid's basically in full-time childcare. But they still get all the good outcomes, which is showing us that it's really those first couple of years that are really crucial. But I can't help but think at the same time I've got a 3-year-old granddaughter. Now my daughter's, been at home for the 1,000 days, more than that, because she's after 2.5, she's turned 3, and she's going to do university and study and stuff. But it still feels way too early for my granddaughter to not have an at-home full dedicated parent. I just, feel like it might theoretically be okay now because she's passed the first 1,000 days. But, I just see this. I just think that precious little girl deserves an at-home parent until she's like 5 or 6, really. Yeah. And then someone just working part-time, so it's hard for me to match up what I know with what the research says.
And then even when the research shows this, even if we are staying at home with our children, we can still be making huge, massive mistakes at the time, can't we? And I think when 18 years ago when I had my first child, people were reading that god-awful book that was telling people to let their babies cry and put themselves to sleep. Oh my God. And, I had friends that did it. And good on them. They were having night's sleep right from the word go. I just literally couldn't do that. I just dealt on intuition right from the word go. And if my baby cried, I held my baby. If I needed him to be in bed for me, I put him in bed for me. I just didn't give a crap what any of the health visitors told me. I just did my own thing. Yeah. And probably, as research shows, I'm probably doing the right thing maybe, but we still can make...
You decrease the kids' chances of anxiety and depression as teenagers, and those people that put the baby on a strict routine didn't guarantee anxiety and depression as a teenager. It's not a black and white thing.
No.
It just way increases their chances because they're not getting those same resiliency skills. They're not building those pathways in the brain that you built in your children's brains by 100 times soothing them.
Yeah.
That's how they learn to self-soothe. Being left alone and screaming it out and then just being abandoned doesn't give you the pathways for self-soothe. It gives you pathways to do with abandonment.
Yeah, I never understood that. How you could carry a baby around with you in 9 months and then you could just leave it to cry. I was thinking, there's still an extension of you, aren't you? You know what I mean? There still should be here.
If you approach it like training a dog, though, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And you do that with your dog, don't you? That's how you train a dog. So if you're only looking at brains 1, 2 and 3 of the human and not that special brain number 4, then that's why it works. But you're just limiting their outcomes. Because all of that good stuff's in brain number 4 and that has to be nurtured into that.
So Nathan, you're linking resilience in the same sentence as anxiety and depression. Case scenario where our teenagers are suffering from anxiety and we've either been to work or not been to work or had our child in daycare or not. They're now teenagers.
What can we do?
What can we do in terms of resilience? Is it too late to develop resilience in our teenagers at this stage where
it's
they're
never
suffering?
too late. You can develop resilience when you're 80 and have never had it before. It's the human brain's never set. It's just about it stays on the same pathway. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same outcomes, but you can always change it. So that thing we talked about before about self-love being at the base of it. So a good, nice, solid guideline for parents. 3 times a week, your kids should hear you celebrate something about yourself, and how good you are at something, and how proud you feel of that. 3 times, you don't have to be way over the top, but they probably never ever hear you say, well, I went and did that interview today, and man, I'm amazed at how just good I am. It just flows naturally. I just found my thing, I reckon. I'm not, I'm sure I'm not the best at it. I'm not saying I'm Oprah Winfrey yet, but I'm really good at that. I can tell. And the kids, when you make statements like that, children will do as you do, not as you say. Kids then know it's okay to own the things that I'm good at.
I like that. So instead of constantly praising them, you're praising yourself, so they can role model that. They can role model actually finding something within yourself that they like about themselves rather than somebody else finding it and speaking it into their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Modelling is really, really powerful. And when you find stuff about yourself that you don't like, modelling how you deal with that as well. Because every single person on the planet has got stuff about themselves that they don't like. Everyone's going to look in the mirror and not like their something. So modelling, that. One I hear in China all the time is, I've got a fat face. Everyone seems obsessed with having a fat face in China. And I've been in China a lot lately, so I just sort of those things you notice. So it's like, so if you're going to be looking in the mirror and the kids are going to hear, go, oh my God, my face looks so fat. Or I look at that photo, my face looks so fat. How do you model how you come back from that? That you go, oh, good, it makes me look really smiley.
Makes me look younger.
Yeah, cool. I won't have hardly any wrinkles because my face is still all that chub on it. Excellent. It's still belonging to it.
I say that about my
model that model that you can still, because you are going to be critical. The kids are never going to be not critical of themselves, but I think it's that modelling resilience, is showing how you bounce back from that, what the mind frame is. I do think most people's biggest problem is themselves and their own belief. Most people have set themselves a standard that is above where they are, and then they spend their whole life going, oh, I'm not good enough, instead of being grateful and celebrating who they are. And I know it's easier said than done when you're not in the middle of depression, but anybody living today is living in a luxurious world where we have running water coming out of the taps at any temperature we want, and we stay warm, and everyone's with the right mind frame, every single person can be completely happy and completely content regardless of what traumas happened to them.
And interestingly, there's so much evidence coming out nowadays, scientifically proven, isn't there, about gratitude and the power of praise and being in positivity. Yeah. And that changes mindsets, changes feelings, it changes the way we live our life, and it changes the outcome. In your brain. Changes the hormones in your brain too. If you so from a neuroscience background, how can you explain a bit more about that?
You have to fake it till you make it. You have to act like that person before you become that person. I think that's a fundamental thing. I see that with confidence. I see that with intelligence. People wait and think, I'm going to be confident in the future. Whereas actually, you have to decide to behave confidently and realise no one can see how you feel underneath. Whether you're defined as confident or not by other people is based on that shop window called your face. So on your face, look confident, and everyone will think you're confident. So you might be faking it, but it doesn't matter. Confidence is just how you look, not how you feel. And then when you fake it, after 3 months, people start describing you as a confident person. And then you actually start feeling confident because those behaviours become real. So I think people go, oh no, but I'm just faking it and not feeling it. Yeah, you're supposed to just fake it and not feel it really, and do that for ages until it turns into that.
But this is what the message that we're giving people all the time, isn't it? And so when we are trying to help the teens and the people that we come into contact with, as you say, everybody's got an issue, and to address that issue, you've got to reverse it, and there's only one way to reverse it, isn't that? So you say, fake it till you make it. And as you say, even about the whole self-love thing, if you've destroyed yourself your entire life, and I speak from experience because I did it until I was 38, hated myself up until I was 38, pulled myself apart at any possible moment. 38, went, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Not going to do it anymore. But I had to go back to basics, and I had to retrain my brain. And I didn't just train the conscious brain, I had to retrain my subconscious brain as well. I had to do the whole thing. And this is why we do what we do, isn't it? We're always trying to teach teenagers. And
there's often a breakthrough moment like that. I had that breakthrough moment. I come from a bit of a once warrior's background growing up, and so I had all that screwed up stuff in my head. And I remember just having this epiphany that was with a whole set of circumstances, but led to this epiphany where I realised that voice that I've got inside my head is really super critical and hateful and judgmental, and that voice is supposed to be my best friend. And I'm actually in charge of that voice now because I'm a grown-up and I can just make that voice do whatever I want it to do. And so I just decided on that day, that same thing, that, well, you can just shut up now. If you've got nothing positive to say, shut the fuck up.
And that's what you always say, Joe, isn't it? You wouldn't actually listen to your best friends say those things to you. And therefore, why do you take it from yourself and actually got authority over it?
Hanging out with you, you'd never have this best friend that goes, you're too stupid for that. No one's going to, you're not clever enough to do that. No one's going to like you. You wouldn't have a best friend that says like that. Mine was like a critical step-parent instead of being a best friend. But it amazed me how easy it was to starve it, actually. It was the conscious decision. And that just every time it started again, I was just like, no, I'm not listening to that right now. Make myself do something, get on the phone, listen to a loud song, anything, just not to let that voice. Because, no, I'm not listening to you anymore. If you're not being positive, shut up. And I was like, la, tra, la, 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 not listening. And that seems childish, but it only took like 2 weeks to starve that critical voice down because I was no longer feeding it. And then, in its place, I could just plant the voice that I wanted, everything that I'd learned, everything I wanted to be.
Is that harder though, Nathan? When the brain's developing in a teen years between 12 and 24, is it? There's a major development. And people think teen years that teenagers are influenced by their hormones, but much more so it's brain development, isn't it?
So it's all the one thing, but it's the hormones. Is it
harder, therefore, to kind of have that sense of positivity and speak over yourself as adults? We're speaking as adults, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Is it harder as teenagers to do that?
Yeah, because the very part of the brain that you need, that executive function to go, right, I'm just going to shut that voice down, I was like 20 before I got the executive function to be able to do that, and that's pretty much the end of adolescence, because that very brain that you need to do that is the one that's shut for renovations. So you're far more likely to be in your emotional brain just going, oh no, it's all too hard. And that's what it's like for a lot of us as teenagers. And you get little flashes of that cortex control. But yeah, it is way harder as a
And
teenager.
for the parents listening, what can we do then when we see our child in conflict or anxiety or depression or self-harm?
Yeah.
What can we do when we're standing back and watching it?
Yeah.
Where's our role in it? Is it
I think
to
our role
understand
is-
the feelings? Is it to speak in to understand those feelings? Or is it to...
Possibly, I don't know, maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know if I can understand their feelings. I don't even know if I would attempt to understand their feelings. I've had 2 daughters, couldn't understand either of them, and they've grown up and never understood their feelings. I'm a trained counsellor, and I understand my son's feelings, but he said feelings like I had feelings. But I never understood, I still don't really understand my daughter's feelings. So it might be a bridge too far for some people to understand their feelings, but I think metacognition, and talking about how you operate and how your brain works. I can't fix your actual problem. If you've got anxiety and because you think you're fat and whatever it is that yours in your teenage brain, I don't even know if I can fix that usually. Logic doesn't fix it. I can tell you actually you're a size 10, so you can't be fat. It's all in your head. But if you feel fat, logic doesn't really take that away, even if you are a size 10. So I would more talk metacognition, which is about how you as a person operate. How when we have anxiety, everybody has anxiety. Everyone has, days where they feel like shit. How do they manage it? That's metacognition. Cognition is just the thinking. Metacognition is thinking about how you think. So I would teach the teenagers about how your brainstem and your cortex, this higher intelligence brain, because they know they have moments when they do feel good and they do feel like they're in control, but it's only a fleeting thing. To get them to understand, that's your cortex. And then your lower brain, that's brain number 4, your cortex. Your lower brain number 1 is your brainstem, your survival brain. And when they work like they're on a set of scales, when that survival brain goes up and is all active, then that good brain disappears. It's on the other side of the scale.
They can't work together.
Yeah, no, they can. They can't them both up. So in order to get that good brain that's going to be positive and get all the good stuff and plan your future well, you have to calm your survival brain. That's why mindfulness is such a big topic at schools. That's why yoga does so much to calm people's anxiety. It's one of the number 1 ways to calm anxiety is yoga, because it sort of literally helps to rebalance calming that survival brain to get that cortex online. But what the research shows us is that metacognition, just understanding that, is way more effective in helping teenagers manage their emotions than spending lots of time talking about how she feels fat.
Yeah.
But going, is that coming from your cortex? Do you intellectually believe as a size 10, or can you understand that maybe it's that, your emotions are swaying it as your brainstem's around? Because then they still have that 10%. They go, that girl will then go, yeah, I do understand that because I'm a size 10, that technically, therefore, I can't really have fat legs. Yeah. But that's only a tiny little part of my brain. Most of it is, no, but look, I can see it wobbling. Because I remember that as a teenager, getting obsessed about fat legs. And I was all obsessed that I had too much fat over the top of my knee here. And I remember saying to my foster mother, I was gathering up big handfuls of fat over my leg, going, no, look at all that fat there. And my foster mother, she was my history teacher at high school actually, but she was my foster mother, she walked over and just bent my knee, and all the fat fell out of my hands because I needed it to bend my leg. And she's like, it's for bending your leg. I was like,
okay.
Right, okay. But I always remember that when I empathise with teenagers about feeling fat. I do remember I was about 16, and I was just obsessed with how fat I was, and yet I was a skinny thing.
Yeah, but that's really good. I think we underestimate our teens as well, don't we? We underestimate that they do actually have the ability to take on what you just said.
Because we make that like it sound like it's 100% of the worldview, but you're a size 10. They come back defensively with 100%. No, but I feel. But if you have the conversation, that metacognition conversation, I can understand you're feeling that way, and I would, share my story about feeling that way as well to show you understand it. But can you also understand that? And they will. They will understand the other part that I'm a size 10, certainly I'm not. So really it's probably about my brain. And they understand in adolescence. Well, I sometimes teach this at high schools, and one of the really rewarding parts of that is when the teenage girls usually come up to me afterwards and basically say, oh, thank God, I thought I was just mental. I thank God to know that adolescence is a normal thing, that my emotions are supposed to soar, that they're supposed to be really hard to control, that all rational goes out the window, all rational thought goes out the window, and I just act crazy. Some of them are actually scared that they are going mental and being crazy. So finding out the adolescent changes in the brain that's actually pretty normal, and that it will go away without them doing anything, just biology will take it away, is a huge relief and validation for heaps of them. And that's metacognition, just knowing how your brain works, knowing that it's your limbic emotional brain that's taken over when you're screaming at your child or screaming at your mother, or in those moments of serenity and calmness where you do love yourself and you do realise you have purpose and stuff, is when that brainstem is really calm and that cortex is engaged. So seek that out. Don't, a kid that's got anxiety and depression but is constantly having energy drinks that's arousing their brainstem to keep them anxious, is constantly, you're using drugs and alcohol and throwing that survival brain up again, is not getting enough sleep, is not eating a healthy diet, is having masses of sugar. And all of that stuff is arousing the brainstem, so you're not helping yourself. Of course, when you're already in adolescence, you've already got a bit of anxiety, then having coffee, sugar, alcohol, lack of sleep, hanging out with drama people is just really going to make that a whole lot worse. But if you know and understand how your brain works, there's no magic bullet, obviously, but the research is showing that metacognition, understanding how their system is working, is a more effective intervention for anxiety or depression than narrative therapy, talking about what they're depressed about. So body evidence that actually you can re-traumatise people. So just sitting and going over and over the trauma. I mean, it's a complex thing, because the number one thing about wellness in the literature is a coherent life story. So you do need to have a narrative of your life that is coherent. It doesn't have to be happy, it just has to be coherent. If you tell me I had a wonderful childhood, everything was perfect, I got a perfect husband, I got perfect 3 children, and then on the third session you tell me your father raped you when you were 15, well, that's incoherent, because you can't have had a happy childhood and be raped at 15. So if you're then depressed and don't know why you're depressed, as a therapist you're like, there's why they're depressed, because they're not so much from being raped, but from the incoherence of your life story. And we use narrative therapy and get that into a story that says, I had a wonderful relationship with my parents, I think I had a happy childhood, however, this horrific trauma happened at 15 when my father raped me. I've never been able to really forgive my father for that, but I haven't cut him out of my life and defined our whole relationship by that, but I have decided that my children have always been basically cut off from him and not really had a relationship. That's all still a sad story, but it's now coherent, and the depression disappears. So I'm not saying narrative therapy isn't important, but you just got to think of that in line with when are you doing the narrative therapy. There's a whole body of evidence that for trauma, because my background's mainly around trauma, for trauma that it's really effective to intervene with therapeutic stuff for the first 48 hours. And it's really effective a year after the trauma. But after 48 hours, before 1 year, then most of the evidence shows that re-traumatises children and doesn't actually help with the processing.
Which makes total sense, actually. Especially even if you just think about, like, I'll just bring up an instance. My daughter, the other week, we had a bit of a falling out. She doesn't want to talk about it now.
Yeah.
And I can totally see why she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
She's happy to apologise and move on, as am I. I'm not one of them parents that want to relive things over and over again. But she doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes we just have to trust their process and letting them have a bit of autonomy. Because you don't have much autonomy as a kid. You're constantly told what to do, what to think, how to behave. I think it's important to develop that. That's part of resilience, is that you've got a voice that gets listened to. Children that are never listened to. Like one of the tricks I did with my kids was in the garage, when we're one-on-one, you're allowed to talk to me just like a mate. You don't have to do parent stuff. So that they're not always controlled, or otherwise I'm quite a strict parent. They have to speak to me with respect. They're not allowed to speak to me disrespectfully. They're allowed to challenge me. But respectfully, we're allowed to say, look, I think my bedtime's really unfair, other people go to bed, but they're allowed to do that. They're just not allowed to do it at bedtime. And they're not allowed to do it with any disrespect in their tone or anything at all. It just didn't tolerate any of that. So that means my kids look well behaved by people, but that can also make them feel a bit repressed, and when can they just tell you something? So I think it's important they learn to be respectful, but they also have an avenue where they can just say it. And so for my kids it was one-on-one when we're in the garage. As soon as there's another kid, you're not allowed to speak to me like that in front of another kid, so it's only one-on-one. It doesn't matter if we're one-on-one anywhere else in the world, you're supposed to speak to me like your father, but not in the garage. So then the kids, they start out just swearing in the garage. And they're going, fuck, that's hot, Dad? Just to see, is this real? Sort of thing. But it does mean then your kids, when they want to say, you really humiliated me, when you did that, they're not allowed to speak to you that really, but they are in the garage one-on-one, so they've got an avenue and I think that open communication helps to give kids a feeling of more control in their lives and autonomy, and that's a big part of resilience.
And we all need to be heard, don't we?
Yeah.
We all need to be heard. And as parents, it's really important to feed back into what we think they have said so that they feel heard as well.
Yes.
And you talk about autonomy, which I think is really important because we want to live in a world where we're authentic and real and truthful. Truth is so important, isn't it? And I think there's a confusion sets in with teenagers when they're hearing one thing and sensing something else.
Yes.
And they want the two to line up together so there's no confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that they actually feel heard to have those opportunities.
Yeah. But at the time when they're testing boundaries, and you don't want them to feel so heard that your teenager is running the bloody household and you're held at,
It's a juggle, isn't it, being a parent? It really is a juggle.
Mm-hmm.
What's important, what's not important, what do I need to put boundaries around, what do I need to relax?
To listen to your kids, but also to know when to not listen to them. I used to joke about my kids when they were teenagers that they would desperately wanted me to be at home so that they could ignore me. They were upset if I wasn't at home. They wanted me to be at home. They wanted me there. The more I was at home, the better they felt. They liked me to be there. When they're at home, I could hardly get them to talk to me. They're doing their own thing and stuff. And I thought that's the irony of teenagers. They really, really need me to be here so they can ignore me.
It's kind of
and it's such a learning role, isn't it? Because I would say at parent-teacher meetings, I used to say, look, we understand teenagers have never been teenagers before. They've been children. They're merging into these years that are awkward and freeing and everything all in one go. But actually, you parents have never been parents of teenagers before.
Yeah.
So it's a two-way learning process, isn't it, for parents? And that actually we can never be perfect parents. We are constantly learning. We're constantly growing as our teenagers are. We're adjusting what works for one child doesn't work for another. And actually, it's hard being a parent and to acknowledge the role we're doing. We're doing the best we can in the circumstances that we're in. Sometimes we can do it better, but actually we're constantly growing as well.
I think children really appreciate when you apologise to them as well, because when you do screw up, I do go to my kids and I go, I'm sorry I didn't handle that very well. I'm really sorry, but I've learned from that and I'll never do that again. And it's built up trust within my kids because they trust me. They know that I do try to handle everything as well as I can, but occasionally I'm human and I lose my shit.
And it's a rupture and repair.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, and the message around resilience is rupture and repair. Everyone experiences rupture, where you lose the plot, you have a fight with someone, a relationship breaks down. You can't get through human life without rupture. But resilient people have rupture and repair. And by you going back and saying to the kids, oh, sorry, lost the plot, you take ownership and you repair that relationship so the kids do respect it. So I hear that because I had to learn to do that. I'm not a naturally apologise person. But I did recognise exactly the power of what you're saying, sort of thing, and that sometimes I just screwed up, and if I want my kids to own up when they've screwed up, I'd let my emotions get the better of me, and then I heard my mother's voice come singing out of my mouth. So fronting up afterwards, even when it was awkward, and I'm not a natural apologiser, I can sort of go, oh yeah, sorry, I suppose I lost the plot there. I'd just say it really clearly because I couldn't apologise very easily, so I say it clearly. That was entirely my fault and not your fault, and that was just about me losing my rag. So,
so can I ask you a question which doesn't apply to us listeners, but certainly to you? You've come from a neuroscience background, so you've got the theory, you've got the science, you've got all the information to hand, and yet you're a parent and you're a grandparent and you're a foster parent. So how do the two tally? Is it quite hard knowing the information and knowing what you should do and then being a parent? Because obviously you're challenged even when you know what you should be doing. Absolutely. So how did the two tie in together?
They don't tie in together 100%, I just joke about it often, going, those that can do, those that can't teach. So teach about it. And the reason I need to teach about it is probably because I do come from a Once Were Warriors background, and my automatic pilot is probably Once Were Warriors. And so I don't want to parent that way. So I've had to consciously think about all these things to really consciously change it. I always had the intent, as a kid, my thing that I mainly wanted to be was a dad and all that sort of stuff. So I was the family babysitter and things. But I sometimes think the reason I'm teaching is because I need to know it more than other people do, because left to my own devices, I just turn into Jake the Muss. So I had to learn that stuff really consciously, and because I've learned it consciously, I think I'm good at taking parents from Once Were Warriors to, I want to say something more modern than Little House on the Prairie, because then I sound really
I love it though. We do love Little House on the Prairie. I'm sure most of our listeners are not in that area, but we do love Little House on the Prairie.
Right. So because I had to come with that journey myself, I think I know how to take parents there in a realistic way, and what information do they need to get there.
Totally.
So tell us a little bit about your science background and what your training was.
It was a backward way because, neuroscience wasn't even around when I was at high school. Didn't know there was anything called neuroscience. And Yes, I started out training as a primary school teacher. I just knew I wanted to work around kids, and so I didn't know what. So I got into teacher college, so I went and trained as a primary school teacher. Spent only a year as a primary school teacher and worked out that it was the naughty kids and stuff that I really liked the most. And then so I switched and went back into the masters and trained around child trauma. So then spent like 15 years, so most of my professional career was working with kids in therapeutic settings, not in the classroom. And that was really stumbling as you go. It's completely, it's not unfunded, but you're just poor because there's no money in being a helper. You've got to have 5 clients a day in order just to be above the breadline, and emotionally you should be only having 3 clients a day if you're really serving those kids properly, but you can't afford to have a family and do 3 clients a day, so you do 5 clients a day. And no one really teaches you, even with a master's degree, exactly how you heal these kids. So the master's degree and all the qualifications tell you all the things not to do, and all different people's theory of personality and stuff, but it's only towards the end of the masters I realised, no one's going to give me no secret recipe. I've been waiting for this. I realised you have to draw on your own, and so you really learn heaps of it, after you're qualified and as you're doing it. But that's really what got me into neuroscience, was it gave some sort of science around trauma. So all the rest of it was all social emotional. The kids, got a lack of self-love, they've got a lack of low self-esteem, a lack of self-worth. It's all social emotional aspects, which can be hard to grasp. And I liked the neuroscience of, their frontal cortex is completely offline, so there is going to be no emotional regulation, there is going to be no empathy. Also liked how that means the kid's not innately evil. That frontal cortex has to be bloomed, it has to be brought in, has to be nurtured into being, like it was with every other human being. Just most of us come from, even my background, I still had a mother that loved me, even if she was pissed off. She still loved me. That's different than not being loved. And I had a grandmother that was, completely there to take over. And so, it was fine anyway. So I've lost my whole trail of whatever I was talking about. Neuroscience. So I like the science of neuroscience, and it gave you something solid. And I saw when I was doing parenting groups that dads started to move way more instantly when I could show a brain scan. And so I just sort of got into it more and more from there. And that metacognition thing, helping my clients to understand how their brain's working and how they can heal themselves. I really, when you're a child trauma specialist and you're doing 5 clients a day and you're working with for 1 hour a day and you might see them once a week, but you might only see them once a month, you soon work out that you aren't going to heal that kid, right? But you can teach that kid how to heal themselves. And because they're going to be with themselves 24 hours a day. I might be with you 1 day a month, so I ain't going to be able to do the healing. I can show them how to do it, and then it's through they do it themselves. It's through changing that mindset. Language is such a powerful thing. It's a big part of what I teach people. And then we tapped into it before saying get the parents to say 3 times a week to celebrate something they're good at. If you can make yourself, a lot of people make self-effacing statements. So if you're a kid and you come to my office, I can't heal you in an hour, but I can in an hour teach you that every time you say, I'm stupid at that, I'm dumb, you're actually making that a reality. So even if you don't believe it, and you really do believe you're stupid and you're dumb, humour me, and for the next week you've got to train yourself to, when any time you make a self-effacing statement, you've got to retract it, and you've got to follow it up with a self-affirming statement. Because everybody, no matter how worthless they think they are, has affirming stuff that they can. When you go, I'm stupid at reading maps, then you can rephrase that to go, I've got a long way to go in learning how to read maps. There's still some future in that.
And I love that about you, because you always see the strength, because everything's got an equal and opposite, hasn't it? And I love when you talk about OCD. We might see OCD as a problem, but as you say, if you're a business leader, that's what you want, isn't it? Actually, it's your superpowers. And actually,
I want a pill that people can take so they can get bloody more of it.
I think
it's great. More OCD.
And anxiety is actually being cautious. We need cautious people, as we say. So actually everything, all our traits, all our strengths are also our weaknesses. How can we turn it around into the opposite? And that's what I think we need in schools, is an understanding. Because I lived in boarding schools for 15 years. And I lived in and I heard the same conversations about the same children that come up again and again. These were the naughty children. These were the children that caused chaos. And yet I would be constantly seeing the strengths in that child. Because I came from a sporting background and an art background. So I could see the other side of that child. And actually you can turn everything around. So for those parents listening that are seeing the weaknesses in their children, actually what are the strengths? What are the opposites?
Because that's what you're growing.
And if your child is tenacious or stubborn, see them as tenacious. They need tenacity in their life to get through where they're going.
That's right.
But actually what's hard is channeling through the sort of school years with that stubbornness, but turn it around into you've got this incredible strength to fight. And you're going to need that. Let's nurture it and train it. But it's hard, isn't it? Because when it's the weakness, it's hard to deal with.
Yeah, but it's about that parent. How the parent. I think it's always easier to change your own behaviour than it is to change your kids' behaviour, especially by the time they're a teenager. You haven't really got a lot of power to change their behaviour, but you can change your own behaviour anytime you like. And as soon as you change your behaviour, they often change their behaviour in response to.
I like that.
I think
role modelling.
Lots of people need to start taking more accountability of themselves, don't they? And looking within, because it's easy to put the blame elsewhere, and I've just got a difficult child, or I've just got a difficult this. If we, as you say, if we start taking accountability for ourselves,
and it is that I think people just underestimate how powerful language is, and the way that you're languaging yourself, but also the way that you language those kids. So when you see those strengths, because I so see that, because my ADHD is, I think, probably the main reason why I'm so successful now, and why I can stand on the stage in front of thousands of people and have a personal conversation with them. I don't get overwhelmed by public speaking. I'm a natural show-off. But when I used to stand up the front and take all the attention and tell stories, it was called disrupting the rest of the class, and I got detentions for it. And constantly on my reports, it was Nathan's distracting everybody else in the class, and the occasional teacher went, "Wow, you're a leader," and used that. I had this teacher at primary school that came and took over as the principal, and I was school president, and he didn't know anybody. It was only a little country school. We had like 40 kids in the whole school. So I was just running the school by then, because we'd had a couple of changes of teacher. And he came in and he saw that he had no control over the class at all. And he was going, and I felt sorry for him when he was standing there on like day 3 going, excuse me, you can listen to me, excuse me. Nobody paid a single word of attention. But this is how country school operates. I felt a little bit sorry for him, so I just went, quiet please, dead silence in the class. And because that's just how we operated, we were a family.
Yeah.
And I looked after everybody, so they just looked to me to, and he saw that and worked in partnership with me.
And how important is that, though, to have somebody that you can remember that affirmed you, that understood you?
Yeah,
that's quite critical, isn't it?
Yeah,
if there's 99 voices against you, but there's one for you, do you remember that one voice?
Yeah, because he could have gone, you're defiant, you're, what's the word,
unruly.
You're undermining me,
Yeah.
undermining my authority. He could have seen me as the absolute problem that he needed to get rid of in order to control the school, but he didn't. He saw it in a strength-based way and went, well, this kid's a leader. And his name was Russell Mill. We should name and shame people that are really brilliant teachers. Yeah. So his name was Russell Mill, and he was at Hallburn Primary School.
But he didn't have an ego either, because if you've got an ego and you walk into a classroom like that, then that's where you are going to have, you're going to with a child like that. Whereas if you walk in and you're free of ego and you've got nothing to prove, then absolutely go in partnership with that.
And then he ended up getting me to write and produce the whole school play for that year. And I just, as a child, that was a profound experience for me, because I just realised how much more competent I was than I realised. When he first suggested, when I said, well, you're the principal, you've got to write a school play, and you've got to direct it, and all the parents come at the end of the year, because that's just what we always do. And he said, why on earth would I do that when you're way better at all those things than I am?
I love that.
And I was like, what? And he's like, you'd write a way funnier play than me. You're constantly cracking everybody up. I never make anyone laugh. You want me to direct the play? All the kids already listen to you. I'd just be asking you to... So it's like, oh, all right then. So I took over the role that I thought was the principal's role, and then did that brilliantly. I think that's just an example.
Look at you now, inspiring so many. So, Nathan, you've covered so much. You've given us, and me even, so many tools to go away with, so much inspiration about your journey and where children are at, teenagers are at. One key tool you'd like to leave our listeners with?
One key tool. So many. I mean, the key tool's got to be gratitude. I know it's it's a pretty blunt thing, and, I think Oprah told everybody to do it, but lying in bed at night, or waking up in the morning and listing off 10 things that you are grateful for. Because you do, no matter how shit your life is, there are 10 things you can be grateful for. I don't have cancer. My mother's still alive. It's not that hard to find 10 things to be grateful for, but it changes your mindset. Right at the very start of the day, that what your brain's looking at and how it's perceiving the world. So it might be a bit glib.
That's great.
But I think it is about training yourself.
And once you do train that, when you do your 10 things, and your 10 things that you find, and you live in gratitude then, don't you? It's like Sue and I wrote a gratitude journal for about 4 years. I don't do that anymore because I live in constant gratitude.
Yeah, it becomes an attitude.
Absolutely.
And I always anchor it for some reason at a washing machine. I think I had a past life where I did lots of washing in the river or something, because I'm forever grateful for the washing machine. I just think, wow, that's a miracle. You just stick all your clothes on, you come back 2 minutes later and they're all washed.
Love it.
Especially when you've got 4 kids, we love our washing machine.
Yeah, that's right.
So whether you're a teenager, whether you're a parent, whoever you are listening to the podcast, live in gratitude is such a great message. Nathan Wallis, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. Thank you.
Cheers.
If you're interested in more of what Nathan's got to say, then please go check him out on Facebook at Nathan Wallis or on YouTube. Thanks very much. Bye. Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Paul. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.